Okay, well, let's see. I have the honor of making sure all the equipment's working properly, so that's nice for me. I caught a little bit of a cold a couple of days ago, so hopefully you can hear me pretty well, right? So, okay, great, okay. So what I'm going to talk about hopefully will have some value-added benefits for professionals as well as a research community. So without further ado, let me get right into it. I'm going to talk mainly about improving social marketing effectiveness, something that I care a great deal about. I'm more of the type of person that looks like we're trying to accomplish something with social marketing, so let's focus on trying to be most effective in achieving the outcomes we're looking for, rather than looking about how we go about achieving those things. So I'll talk about that some more, okay? Marketing's always been about trying to achieve those outcomes. With commercial marketing, they worry about increasing sales, increasing market share, and things of this nature, and they do that through brand activities, advertising, and those kind of tactics. So marketing has always been about, let's find ways of achieving these outcomes we want, and that's commercial marketing's history. The marketing activities that we do to accomplish those goals are not as important as achieving the goals that we're looking for. So whereas a corporation may be focused on increasing sales, as social marketers, we're more focused on achieving some sort of outcomes such as increased vaccination rates, safe sex practices, something like this, for pro-social benefits to society. So the tactics are not as important as just focused on trying to be more effective in achieving those outcomes. Okay? So, social marketers, my message would be we need to not worry so much about the tactics we're employing as social marketers as being really more focused on the strategy, that is trying to have a bigger impact on what it is we're trying to achieve. So whatever those outcomes should be. That should be the criteria, okay? So it's not as important whether we're implementing all the 4 Ps or anything like this, or whether we should be focused on behavior change or something like this, but let's look at what outcomes we're trying to achieve. If we focus on the strategy and then worry about the tactics later, I think we've got a better probability of having more effectiveness than if we have a given set of tactics in mind and just look for opportunities to employ those tactics. Okay? Marketing has always been multidisciplinary. There's really no purity to marketing. It's always borrowed from other disciplines. That's just the nature of what marketing is all about. So as social marketers, we likewise have to be open-minded and realize there's really no purity to social marketing either. I know of a colleague who feels, well, social marketing has to implement the 4 Ps. It must. And if it doesn't, therefore, it cannot be social marketing. So this colleague looks for, it must have a product associated with it because that's one of the 4 Ps. And I'm thinking that really limits what you can do as a social marketer with that way of thinking. And it's okay if you want to think that way, but it's going to limit your effectiveness because instead of focusing on your strategy and finding tools, tactics that will work for that strategy, then you've started with focusing on these are the tools, the only tools that we can use, and so you're limiting your effectiveness. So I would just remind everyone that marketing has always been borrowing from other disciplines, and that the reason we do that is because we're faced with new problems in the future, and we always try to find new ways to be more effective in achieving those outcomes. Okay, so historically, social marketing has over-relied on commercial marketing tactics. Social marketing really began in around the 1969 to 1972 era, and you had a couple of social marketing professors, Philip Kotler and maybe Michael Rothschild, that said, well, you know, we're doing all these things to increase profits for corporations. Why don't we use some marketing tactics to do something good for society? And that was kind of the basic ideal. But what they had to do is to convince the marketing community at that time to start thinking pro-socially is, well, we need to use commercial marketing tactics in a pro-social way, and that was the way they could sort of evolve the thinking of the marketing community at the time. But that was then, and this is now, and now it's pretty much accepted that it's okay to use marketing for pro-social benefits, so we don't have to make that argument any longer. Now we have a lot of freedom to just find out what works best, okay? So again, my message is let's focus on what we're trying to achieve first and worry about the tools we're using later, depending on our situation. So the goal is to be more effective in what we're trying to achieve for society. Okay? So social marketing is quite a bit different from commercial marketing. Thank you. There's a lot of differences, and because of those differences, we as social marketers should be more flexible in coming up with creative ways to achieve what it is we want to achieve. Commercial marketing is all about trying to increase the wealth of the owners of business. That's what they're trying to do, and that's fine. But as social marketers, we're not interested in that, are we? We're interested in trying to achieve other things. So again, the point is, all marketing is multidisciplinary, and it's helpful to assimilate other ideals from other disciplines into our toolbox so that we can be more effective in doing what it is we're doing. And so commercial marketers may not have an interest in public health, but we as social marketers certainly do, don't we? And so let's look at other disciplines and see what may help us as social marketers to have better strategies and to be more effective. Public health has a lot to offer, I think. Social movement theory, believe it or not, has a lot to offer. Political science theory has a lot to offer. May not be of much interest to commercial marketers, but to social marketers, there's a great deal to assimilate and add to our toolbox and make us more effective. Okay? So as social marketers, we tend to over-rely a bit on targeting individual behavior change. And there's some situations where that's absolutely appropriate and the best strategy, but not always. And one reason we tend to do that is because that's sort of a carryover from what we've done from commercial marketing, where we want to influence human behavior. We want to increase brand preference and things like that for commercial marketing purposes. And so, marketing has brought in ideals from psychology for years to influence behavior, and so it's kind of natural for us as social marketers to think in terms of behavior change and influence, and doing this through communications. And that's just a natural tendency of things to do. But again, if we want to focus on achieving greater impact on the outcomes we're looking for, then maybe we have different ways to think about this too. Okay? So my message here is, well, let's broaden our scope from the individual to take into account the environment in which the individual lives. Let's take into account that greater context. So because people have a responsibility for their own health, but their own health quality is often an interaction between the individual and his or her environment, the environment we live in, okay? And so as social marketers, when we're formulating our strategies, maybe it would make us more effective if we took in the environment that people live in into account in our planning as well. So we can take the individual to account, certainly, the micro environment and the macro environment, okay? So when I talk about microenvironments, what I'm talking about is people's home life, their family life, their lifestyles, their routines, their habits, their working conditions, the norms at work, their social environment, their friends' activities, their neighborhoods, their communities. All those things make up the microenvironment, the close proximity around which people live. Those things impact people's quality of life and their health, certainly. And the macro environment really gets at those society kind of level influences on people, okay? And as social marketers, maybe in our planning, we can take the environment into account beyond just individual behavior change. And in doing so, in some cases, this may make us much more effective in targeting certain things we want to improve upon. So with social marketing targeting, maybe we should look at what is the largest contributor to the social problem that I, as a social marketer, am dealing with, okay? If we can deal with the major contributors to a particular social problem, then maybe we can be more effective in improving upon that social problem, okay? And we can also look at which contributors to this problem I'm dealing with as a social marketer, can I have some impact on improving, okay? And therefore make a bigger impact on behavior change. So I've seen a lot of social marketing campaigns which have been relatively ineffective. So for example, in the state of California in the US, So social marketers got a grant from the government of $5 million, which is a nice sum, right? To encourage people to eat better. And so they put together a social marketing advertising campaign to encourage people to eat more fruits and vegetables. It's a good message, right? And did it change lives? Well, not really. Do people know they need to eat better? Well, of course. But I looked and I said, $5 million sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? I mean, for social marketers, that's like a windfall, really, for us a lot of times. And then I looked at what the industry was spending in the state of California annually. And they were spending several $billion, okay? So if you look at the environment that people lived in the state of California, the social marketers for 1 year were able to spend 1 or 2% of what the industry was spending to convince people to eat a certain way. And of course, the industry spends this amount every year. So if you sort of look at the context then, you can understand why this generous campaign really had a trivial effect, because we weren't impacting the environment at all. We were targeting behavior change, and of course it didn't work because the environment overwhelmed that, okay? So that's a big part of the message there, is we should take the environments into account to see if we can have any effects there, especially if the forces from the environment are having a great impact on these social problems we as social marketers are trying to deal with. Okay, let's take tobacco into account a little bit. I like tobacco as an example because it is one of the few things that are marketed to people that if you use it the way in which it's intended to be marketed, still harm you. And there aren't too many pure examples like that. So let's look at examples, tobacco industry a little bit. So the source of the problem with the tobacco issue is the availability of tobacco and its marketing in society in general. Okay? That's really the major cause of this social problem. So the major cause of the tobacco issue comes from the macro environment. It's a society level force. The industry, the availability of the product itself is harmful. And of course, the marketing of the product to encourage the consumption of the product is harmful. So the obvious solution to this is, of course, to ban tobacco, okay? And there is one country on earth that actually has done this. It's a very small country. I wrote this in a book chapter a couple of years ago. Can't remember the name of it, but it actually banned it. And of course, that's the obvious solution, but of course, that's not practical. I admit that. We can't ban tobacco for other reasons. So what should we do as social marketer? We can't get the country to ban tobacco. That's impractical. So what should we do? Should we promote smoking cessation programs, encourage people to stop smoking, put up posters of workshops we can have to get people to stop smoking? If we're purists and want to implement the 4 Ps, maybe we can convince people to start buying nicotine patches, nicotine gum, things like this, or the new the e-cigarettes and all these things, the vapor things that are popular. I see people smoking these vapor things all the time now, and I don't see them doing this instead of smoking, but in addition to it, kind of an interesting thing. It's a novel approach, I guess, replacing one problem with another. Okay, so the tobacco issue, the macro environment, we can't remove tobacco from society. That would be the obvious solution. That would be the effective solution, wouldn't it? That would just end the problem. Okay, but because of political realities and the industry influence and things of this nature, it's impractical and really impossible to remove tobacco from society. So what can we do secondarily is targeting this issue. Maybe we can restrict some of the marketing activities through some regulatory efforts. Can we affect how tobacco is advertised, how it's sold, how it's promoted and packaged? They can. In my country, Canada, they have banned the sale of flavored tobaccos like menthol cigarettes and stuff. That's banned. And the way it's advertised has been restricted severely. And in convenience stores where cigarettes are sold, now what they do is they can't display the cigarettes anymore, so you can't see the brand packaging. So they have to have covers and things like this. So people have to go in and request, and they're not on display any longer. So some of those deal with the regulation of the advertising and such. And of course, as some of you know, through international trade agreements now, Some countries, it's illegal for them to regulate the advertising of some of these brands now because of international trade agreements, which is kind of interesting. So the industry continues to fight for its power, and those things become more difficult. We can be creative as social marketers and not think beyond some of these things. Well, we can't ban tobacco. Maybe we can regulate a little bit. Maybe we should advocate for the regulation of tobacco to have some effect on this problem. Maybe we can require stronger filtering of the product. Maybe we can actually maybe we can pass a law where they can remove, tobacco companies, you can continue to market your tobacco, but in your production you have to remove the nicotine. Wouldn't that be something? So that biological reinforcer, I smoke because that nicotine does something for me, and what if you remove the nicotine? And so people could continue to smoke, but it just wouldn't have the same effect, would it? So that might be interesting. Can they remove nicotine from it? Well, in the American tobacco companies, they adjust the production so they manage the nicotine level in the products. So it's manipulated now at a level where it has maximum impact on the, I don't know if you want to say addiction, but get people to enjoy that feeling they have, okay? Other things you can do is increase the cost of tobacco to the consumer, which is fairly popular in a lot of countries, so, because it's increased tax revenue as well. So one thing they've done in Canada is they're taxing the hell out of tobacco right now. And so a pack of cigarettes will cost $10 or better. And so, of course, that makes it more difficult for younger people especially to buy a lot of cigarettes, okay? And people are still doing it, of course, but it reduces the smoking rates and the volume of smoking that people engage in. So all those things can have an impact. But you see, everything we're talking about at this point is not dealing with behavior change yet, is it? We're looking at the environment, aren't we? And you can really chip away at things in the environment before you even get to the behavior change part and have an impact on the social problem. Okay, so looking at the macro environment, is banning the product possible? If it is, maybe we should do that. Okay, if it's not possible, then can we somehow remove some of the biological reinforcers in the manufacturing of the product? Okay, can we say, yes, you can manufacture your cigarettes, but you have to remove nicotine? Can we have an impact on the way the product is produced, distributed, or marketed? Can we affect those as social marketers? But see, we have to think differently as social marketers. Now we're thinking about effecting public policy, aren't we? Instead of just putting together a campaign targeted to consumers, see? But as social marketers, if our goal is to affect the social problem, then that's our strategy, and we can attack these from different avenues but if we solely think in terms of communicating at the individual consumer level, then our ability to have major impacts on social problem is greatly reduced at the beginning based on our own thinking, which is a tragedy, really, because we're trying to make things better for our fellow citizens in our society, okay? Can we remove cues from the environment to stimulate behavior? I mentioned in Canada, they're trying to remove the brand displays from the retail environment, okay? Can we make presentation of branding more difficult, okay? What about vending machines? Can we, remove vending machines from public spaces, just making it a little more difficult? That might be politically more palatable to your politicians and industry people to affect things on the edges like that rather than sort of banning a product or something like this, okay? Now, so we've looked at the macro environment a little bit. What about the micro environment? Can we do anything there? And so with the micro environment, we're looking at really people's home life, their work life, their close proximity in their communities and things like this. What can we do there that might make the environment they live in more healthy? And if we want to change their behavior, make it more supportive of that behavior change, okay? Maybe ban smoking from public spaces, which is largely done. You can't fly on an airplane any longer and smoke. So, there's some of those things. It's more difficult to smoke now. Can you avoid cues to stimulate unhealthy behavior? Well, when you pass a lot of cigarette displays and things like that, you have cues in the environment for the branding and things of this nature. When you pass vending machines, it makes it more convenient to get the product. Those are cues too. Okay. So the microenvironment is kind of interesting because we as individuals interact with our microenvironment quite a bit because this is incorporated into our daily habits and routines. Okay. So if we want to work with individual behavior change, can we affect the microenvironment? Can we get people to remove tobacco from your home? Because if it's not in your home, it's going to be much more difficult to smoke, and you're going to be much less tempted. If you want people to eat healthier at home, then make sure there's not crisp in the cupboard right at home, and make sure there's not soft drinks in the refrigerator, things like this. Affecting that microenvironment makes the behavior change much easier, right? Can you social activities are, if people are trying to smoke, do their friends smoke? Do they hang around people, and their friends smoke? Because if you're around, your friends are smoking, you're trying to quit, much more difficult, right? Affecting the microenvironment a little bit, okay? If things like your route to work, if someone is trying to stop drinking because of an alcoholism issue or something like that, on the way to work, do they pass several pubs? Well, those are cues in the environment, aren't they? That stimulates that behavior and makes it more difficult. Maybe we can work with their microenvironment and get them to have a new route where they're not faced with those cues often. So family members at home, are they supportive of this behavior change you're trying to affect? If you're trying to stop smoking and everyone else in your family's smoking, it makes life much more difficult, doesn't it? So the microenvironment that you're interacting with is not supportive. So as social marketers, if we can not just focus on behavior change, but focus on getting people to alter their microenvironment around them as much as they can individually to make it more healthy and remove cues, then that'll make their ability to change much more probable. Okay? So if we're trying to affect behavior change, let's first look at the microenvironment to make sure it's supportive and healthy and not working against us. And then let's look at individual behavior change modification. Okay? Because individual behavior change is going to be much more difficult if you've got a toxic microenvironment that is telling people if the environment in which I live is telling me to smoke and I'm trying to stop smoking, then it's more of a struggle now, isn't it? It's not supportive, it's toxic, it's not nurturing, it's oppositional. Okay? So as social marketers, the first thing maybe we could do to be more effective is really look out there into the environment in which people live, the context they live in, and look at what are the major influences on this social problem that I as a social marketer am trying to impact, okay? And then second, develop strategies that might be effective in reducing or eliminate those influences on the contributors. So again, the big picture here is, as a social marketer, I'm thinking about strategy right now. I'm not thinking about tactics. I'm not thinking about, okay, well, I know as a social marketer I've got to have a campaign, so let's think about that. No, I'm not thinking about a campaign at this point. I'm thinking about what should I be targeting out there in the environment that's going to have the greater impact on improving this social problem I'm tasked to deal with. So strategy first, and then let strategy dictate tactics, okay? So if major contributors to the social problem are in the macro environment at the society level, then maybe we should be thinking about, instead of individual behavior change, public policy change. Now that's a much different approach for a social marketer, isn't it? Okay? Some social marketers would think that's heresy because we as social marketers can't think about public policy change, and my message would be, why not? There's no purity to marketing. We've always borrowed from other disciplines. If changing public policy is what we need to do to improve the social problem, maybe that's what we should be doing at this point if we want to have an impact. If we can't accept this because it's not what we're used to as a marketer, then we're condemning our efforts to ineffectiveness, essentially. Okay? All right. And that's the main point of my message here. So when public policy change is impossible because of political realities or industry influence on government, then maybe we can go down a step and look at possible regulatory issues we can do. Can we increase regulation. Sometimes regulation is easier to affect than major policy changes like banning something or something like this. Maybe we could have restrictions on production, removing those biological reinforcers like nicotine from tobacco. What if we remove caffeine from soft drinks? What if you didn't have caffeine in Coca-Cola? Wouldn't that be something? We'd sell fewer Cokes, right? Or Red Bulls or any of those things that are so popular now. Loaded with sugar and caffeine, probably not healthy. But those things that make, that give you that good feeling, that give you that reinforcing element from those products, we as social marketers, maybe we can say, okay, Coca-Cola, we can't ban you, but maybe we could reduce the caffeine in there. And that, that would improve the situation a little bit. So we could have an impact there. And maybe we could have restrictions on the marketing, such as advertising, packaging, branding, things like this, okay? And of course, there's going to be opposition to this in the environment as from industry as well. So now we've looked at the macro environment. Let's look at the micro environment. Can we make the home life and the work life more healthy for individuals out there? Okay? Can we get cooperation from family members? Okay? If we're trying to improve people's diet to help them lose weight or something like this, and the home life is very toxic to that, then it's going to be much more difficult for those people. Okay? So the home life, the work life, the social life all impact behavior. And so we can't really treat individual behavior in isolation, because in reality it doesn't exist in isolation. It's always interacting with the environmental forces out there. And so as social marketers, we should be thinking about how to make that environment people live in more nurturing and more healthy and not so toxic and reinforcing to the negative behavior. Okay, so behavior modification has its place and it's very important, but we have to think about the context people live in as well. Okay, behavior modification, when we implement this, and it's got its place, of course, but maybe we should be thinking about this in small increments. So maybe small incremental improvements will be the pathway towards ultimately, affecting behavior and make it more easy. Rather than white-knuckle sobriety for people with alcohol issues, maybe we can, effect something else incremental that'll be easier for them to do. Okay, ultimately, yeah. We can reduce unhealthy behavior frequency, drink less often, smoke less often, eat better, eat worse less frequently, things like this. Remove biological reinforcers from the production of products. What if you had non-alcoholic beer? I would guess that we would drink less beer. I know I would. So there you go. Biological reinforcers. Maybe through behavior modification programs, we can get people towards substitution rather than, avoidance of behaviors. So instead of eating those crisp, eat veggie snacks. So what if people's home life, they, instead of having crisp and candy bars and things like this in the cupboards, they, had the refrigerator and they had carrots and things like this. It won't be fun at first, but if that's all you've got, guess what? You're going to be eating that, right? If you've got fruit in the refrigerator and no crisp in the cupboards, my guess is at some point you're going to be grabbing that fruit, right? So the environment has such an impact. I know from my own life, if it's in the evening and I'm watching television and there's snacks in the cupboard, and crisp and things like that and popcorn, well, that's going to be eaten first, I can tell you that. So the environment does matter so much to behavior change. It really does. It interacts with it. And maybe we can increase healthy behavior frequency and exercise a little more each week. I walked to the university this morning instead of taking a cab, I'm proud to say. So those little things matter. They add up. Okay? Now, this audience is mixed with practitioners, professionals, and researchers, so I'm going to talk a little bit to the research community and say there's a need for more basic research out there. There's too many social marketing articles in our scholarly journals that are applied, that talk about just campaigns. Now, I know that campaigns are important, but as the research community, we need to look at other things and have more basic research that'll fuel our strategy choices and not just our tactic choices, okay? So we need a greater influence with the research community on discovering inner construct relationships, and they will know what I mean by this. We need to give greater attention in our research projects on having impact on those outcomes we want and not on the tactics we employ, okay? We need to improve methodologies. We need to increase the amount of empirical research we're doing rather than just focusing on tactics and things like this, okay? So in the research community, we can begin with the desired outcome variables. What is it we want to see? You know, think about that first, and then think about influences on that outcomes, instead of thinking about the campaigns first, which are tactics, okay? And then we can look at influencing mediators and moderators, and of course the researchers out there know what I'm talking about. All right, so possible outcome variables we should be studying would be local. At the community level, we're looking at averages and rates. Lower alcoholism rates would be a desired outcome, lower obesity rates, lower smoking rates, lower drink driving rates, things of this nature. The research community could look at as outcome variables, and then they could work upstream to find out, okay, what are the bigger influences on those outcomes we want, and they could start finding out what's going to be more effective strategies for the professional community, okay? And for the individual, at the individual level, we could look at, you know, things to affect their behavior. What are we trying to achieve? Stop smoking and things like this, rather than worried about advertising campaigns so much. Okay. So as the researchers out there, we can be looking more towards what influences these outcomes we're looking for. What are going to be the more stronger influences? And so, example, researchers could look at models like this. I mean, very simple model. We want to affect alcohol consumption. What are some influences on this? Okay. Advertising, of course, has an influence. The price of the product has an influence. People's social networks, the proportion of their friends that drink on a regular basis, the presence or absence and prevalence of alcohol in the home, because we're talking about the microenvironment at that point. All these things might be worth studying, examining, rather than focusing on maybe what particular product could we sell them that would be, you know, help them substitute or something of this nature, or what kind of advertising campaign, okay? So again, learning what are influences, what are the strongest influences on this outcome would help us decide what would be the most effective strategy as social marketers. Because again, the emphasis as social marketers should be having the greatest impact on improving the social problem, rather than just on employing some sort of campaign, okay? Research communities could also find interesting mediators. So example, you know, people's proximity, whether they live or you know, something like this to a pub or places like this would have an impact. We could look at moderators such as, you know, is there a gender difference in response to some of these cues in the environment? So, social marketing's future is going to be dependent on our ability to discover knowledge as researchers that would help us formulate strategies for having greater impacts on improving some of these social problems, okay? Knowledge discovery requires an open-minded scientific inquiry, so we should realize marketing is not a pure discipline. It never has been, it never will be. It's always borrowed from other disciplines. And when we're faced with dealing with unusual things like improving some sort of public health issue or something like this, well, this is completely dissimilar to something that a commercial marketer would have to deal with, because they're interested in influencing you to prefer their brand. Well, that has no similarity to what we're trying to do with a social marketer. So maybe we should look at other disciplines to give us insights into how we could be more effective in doing what it is we have to do as social marketers, okay? The research community could, you know, come up with new studies. I'd love to see new articles that look at these interconstruct relationships that would inform our strategy on what can we influence to have greater impact on these social problems, rather than looking at the tactics all the time, okay? Look at upstream constructs that have the greatest influence. What can we do in society that would chip away at obesity rates, at alcoholism rates, all these other problems we have to deal with, okay? So when we do research in the research community to facilitate strategy in the professional community, let's look beyond at the individual level and look at the microenvironment, how we can make that more healthy and nurturing. Let's look at the macro environment to see, because that's where a lot of your big impact is going to come from, okay? That's where a lot of the big effectiveness is going to come from. I looked at some of the social marketing literature to see which social marketing articles actually reported the effectiveness of a given campaign. Most didn't report the outcomes. They report what they did, but they didn't say, okay, we were trying to, improve the, activities of the community and things of this nature, whatever it was, social problem. They actually didn't report the percentage improvement, most of them. Some of them did, and the ones that felt like they were most successful were getting increases like 8%, 7%, 6%, and things like this, and that was good. But if we're trying to solve big problems in society, we want effectiveness not in the single digits, but 80% range, 90% range, right? Wouldn't that be nice? You're going to get those percentage increase by affecting the environment. And that's really the message here, is that let's look, in addition to looking at the individual, let's look at the environment they exist in and try to make improvements there. And if you want to see big impacts on society, that's where it's going to have to occur. Okay. So, finally, for social marketing professionals in the audience, as the research community adds to our knowledge about, okay, what are the big variables out there that have the greatest impact on these social problems we're faced with, then that helps the professionals out there formulate their strategy choices. You need to know what variables you should be emphasizing out there so you can have a greater impact on solving those social problems you're dealt with. Okay? And so we're all faced with limited resources. So the message is, well, you're given limited resources, and there's so many constraints on what we can do. Let's don't place more constraints on ourselves by limiting our thinking to just the individual. And if having a big impact may require public policy issues or affecting the environments and stuff, let's consider that as well. And that's my message, and thank you for your attention. And the